Good afternoon, Honorable Judge Victoria Johnson. My name is Rachel Embert, and I am the daughter of William Jake Embert. Your Honor, before I speak of the violence that stole my father's life from us, I must speak of God. Because without God's guidance, my family would not be standing here. God has been the core, the sole core of our survival. For 12 grueling years, we have lived suspended in this trauma. God has held and carried us when our world was shattered on June 28th of 2014. God sustained us when grief was suffocating. God became each individual breath that we took when the air was knocked out of our lungs. God anchored us when lies buried the truth and justice was delayed repeatedly. It is from that sacred place of unwavering faith that I speak the truth and only the truth. My father mattered to God. His life had purpose. He did not choose this. He did not cause this, and he did not deserve this. Lord, guide me, God. Susan took my father's life through unspeakable evil. You poisoned him. You shot him. And then you staged the scene to make it look like my father committed this horrific act against himself. That is incomprehensible. It is unfathomable. It's devastating. It has shattered my family's heart indefinitely. What Susan did was calculated. Susan's actions were malicious, they were intentional, they were methodical, and they were deliberate. This is evil in its most malignant form. Evil is knowing exactly what you're doing, deciding to do it anyway, and then lying without conscience while others, my family, has suffered at your hands. Susan embodies that definition through these actions. And through what followed after she murdered my father, she lied repeatedly. You have lied. You have told a voluminous plethora of lies to avoid accountability. I'm not even sure you understand what accountability is. You have distorted the truth. And through it all, you've not shown or displayed one minuscule ounce of remorse for what you took from my family. Susan's very own words revealed her abandoned heart when she said that she was too smart to spend her last days here on earth in jail. That statement, it's not casual, it's revealing. It speaks to arrogance, entitlement, and a pathetic belief that consequences do not apply. Susan is a heartless monster. She did not just take my father's life away from me and my family. You took my father's life away from my child. I am now forced to explain my father's absence to my innocent 6-year-old child. I am forced to answer questions to him that break my heart. I hate you for that. And I don't hate anything, but I hate you. Your Honor, we've been forced to watch this violence echo into the next generation. This is not a temporary pain. This is permanent, generational devastation that have altered our lives forever. I wish I was able to rewind the hands of time. From here on, I will keep my father's light, honorable, kind-hearted nature and cherish those memories through actions that he instilled in me as a human being. And I will display that in every single thing I do in this world. Your Honor, I plead to you and before this court to please impose the maximum allowable sentence, life without the possibility of parole, served consecutively, not concurrently, so Susan is permanently removed from society and never again has the opportunity to harm, to manipulate, or destroy another family. Justice demands permanent, protection demands finality, and my father deserves nothing less. God bless you, and thank you for that.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. June of this year will make 12 years that my dad has not been on this earth. 12 long years. All because of Susan. Susan robbed my dad and I of many things. I was only 17 years old when Susan killed my dad, and that closed many chapters in my book, in the book of my life as it was just beginning. 17 years old is a very delicate and volatile age for a man to learn lessons from his father. Lessons that I've had to learn on my own without him or his guidance, being that he was the one that I looked to for advice. My earliest memories that I have, my dad is in them. He was always present, always involved, and always there no matter what. It's very odd for a teenager to have one of their parents as a best friend. Most teenagers are trying to get away from their parents any chance they get, but not me. My dad was and still is my best friend. My wife said there's an empty hole in my heart and an empty seat at our table. My wife will never truly know her father-in-law. Our children will never know their grandfather. And all they know is memories that I and my family have, which are just stories to them, all because of what you stole from us. There are no words that could describe the pain that I feel inside, the same pain that I've had since June 28th, 2014. You remember that day, don't you, Susan? That's the reason why we're all here today, because of what you did. I know that I'll never forget that day. In fact, I have that date tattooed on my arm. I'm not the only one with that date tattooed on my body. There are others with that same date tattooed permanently on their body and brain as well. And they weren't even related to my dad. That's the man that you took from not only me and my family, but from this world. You have no idea how many lives my dad has touched before and after his death. That shows you the kind of man that he was. I know we are not the first family to fall victim to you. My dad was not the first of your husbands to die of natural causes or the matter of death be undetermined, but I know for a fact he will be the last. She is scum of the earth, a liar, a thief, a murderer. She's trash. In my opinion, you do not deserve to walk freely on this earth or to even draw breath. Your Honor, my family is requesting the maximum sentence for each of the charges that Susan is being charged with. I, on the other hand, don't believe our tax dollars are worth housing and feeding her. Like it says in the Bible, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, blood for blood. Your Honor, I know that the death penalty isn't on the table, but if it were up to me, that would be my punishment. My family is requesting life imprisonment, prison without the possibility of parole. Thank you.
It's impossible for me to fully express how profoundly my family and I have been affected by the loss of my brother Jake. What's being presented in this courtroom doesn't even come close to capturing the depth of cruelty involved nor the life that was taken. My brother, William Embert, known to everyone as Jake, was not just a victim. He was a loving, compassionate, funny, and deeply trusting man who mattered to so many. He enjoyed the everyday parts of living and took joy in the small things, listening to his kids, spending time with his family, and teasing those that he liked. Since he was the baby of my family, he was fairly close in age and had a sibling-type relationship with my oldest nieces and nephews, and they all looked up to him and loved him just as much as I do. Jake was very giving, and as they say, would give you the shirt off his back. He acted in that manner late one night for Susan when she called him in distress. And what she gave him in return was to rob him of all the things that gave him joy and ultimately God's most precious gift, his life. He had a special way of making people feel safe and valued, especially through his amazing hugs. They carried so much warmth and love, and they are something I will greatly miss for the rest of my life. Jake was my only brother, the baby of our family. I helped raise him, and we shared a bond that shaped who I am. We expected to grow old together. We talked about it and made plans, shared laughter, and often leaned on each other through life's hardest moments. The relationship was stolen, and I can never have it replaced. Since my brother was poisoned and murdered, a piece of me went with him and left a permanent absence in my life. I miss him tremendous, not just on holidays, but in the everyday moments when I reach for the phone to think, I need to tell this to Jake, only to remember that he's gone. The way he was killed has made our grief even more unbearable. It shook my faith to its core. He was deliberately poisoned and murdered with malice intent and no chance to protect himself. This was a calculated, premeditated act he suffered while the person responsible, Susan, watched him dying. When the poison didn't work, Susan shot him and staged his death as suicide. This level of cruelty and deception is beyond comprehension. Jake lost his father at the age of 6. I was 12. We were raised by a single mother that took us to church on Sundays, taught us to be kind, to respect the law, and to care for others. Because of that, I will never understand how someone who claimed to love him his own wife could choose to do something so violent, so heinous, and beyond heartless. This was not an accident. It was a deliberate choice that ended his life and shattered ours. Our family has been forever changed. Jake's grandson will not know him. His children married, he wasn't there. Future generations will never know the man who should have been part of their lives. I wear a ring engraved with the words, "No farewell words were spoken. No time to say goodbye. You were gone before we knew it, and only God knows why." I wear it as a reminder that although the unbearable pain and suffering that was inflicted on my brother by this monster is unfathomable, I know that he is in a much better place. Jake remembered his vows and trusted the person he loved. That trust was betrayed in the cruelest way possible. His future, the memories, relationships, and life he should have had were taken from him. I respectfully ask that the court to sentence Susan to life in prison without parole, so our family is not forced to relive this trauma again and again. I also ask that the additional 5-year sentence be served consecutively. Jake deserved to live life. He deserves safety, dignity, and the chance to grow old. While nothing can undo what's been done, accountability matters. For my brother, for my family, for justice, so no other family ever has to endure what we have at the hands of pure evil. Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, in response to what was just represented by defense counsel about what was different about this trial that makes punishment different, I would remind the court in the earlier aspects of this case when initially the defense tried to present a certificate representing that the defendant was a registered nurse, and this certificate was actually a registered nurse certificate for another individual who was identified as having the same name as this defendant at some point. Her name was Susan Melton. The parent defendant's name was Susan Melton. And this effort was made for the court to take judicial notice of a claim that this defendant was a registered nurse when the defense knew or should have known from all of the record that it was already established that she was not a registered nurse. But this effort was made nonetheless. And, I don't know where they got this certificate from, where they are claiming now that she's a registered nurse in an effort. The court should have taken notice of this, and I'm sure the court recalls this particular aspect of them. That is different, showing that notwithstanding the falsity of this particular claim, they're going to still try to run it by the court in a manner that certainly is worthy of the notion that they're continuing to make this. If the defendant came up with that, it was a continuing effort to make false representations, continuing to lie. So that right there is what the court should recall from the earlier aspects of this case and what is different and why sentencing would be appropriately different. So I'll begin with that. Again, the family has outlined everything, and the court again has noted that while the poisoning aspect of it was not tried again, the totality of the circumstances indicating that Jake Embert did suffer before dying is part of the totality of this case. And it would be most appropriate in this instance for the court can impose a sentence of life without parole, and the gun conviction must be served consecutively, so that would be a potential life sentence without parole plus 5 to serve, which the court can impose. And I won't be repetitive. The court is fully aware of all of the nuances of what this defendant did, and the court is totally independent of any prior rulings by the court. And I would submit again that there is something different that has transpired from the point of the first trial and the sentencing of that trial, which again reflects on a negative connotation against this defendant. Moreover, her general history has shown that she's been involved with multiple instances of battery and violence. So this is the ultimate act of violence, the ultimate battery, and that she should be sentenced to life without parole plus 5 years consecutive. That's the recommendation of the state. Thank you.
May I please the court?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I'd like to talk just a little bit about the two options here, life with parole and life without parole. And the first part is just what one does and what the other does not do. And the second is the legal issue that is involved in sentencing. Firstly, whatever the court does today, this will be a life sentence. Susan would be 91 years old when she became eligible for parole. That would be the first time that the parole board could look at her case and consider whether or not to grant parole. It is not a question of life or not life. It is a question of life with a continued incentive to get better, and life where the message is nothing you do for the rest of your life will matter. Nothing you do will be reviewed. And that's why we're asking for life with the possibility of parole, because that not only imposes a sense of life, accomplishes all of the things that a life without parole sentence would accomplish, such as deterrence, such as punishment, such as finality, but it also allows the defendant to remain someone who is encouraged to grow, to reflect, to rehabilitate in prison. When someone is sentenced to life without parole, that takes away that hope, that idea, however slim that they may be someday outside of prison walls. And that's a very powerful hope, but it's also a very powerful piece of leverage for the state. It's a powerful structure for someone who is serving that sentence to encourage them to improve, to rehabilitate, to make amends, to cause no further harm as they are serving their sentence in prison. So I'd ask the court to consider that as it weighs its options here. Now, in the first case, Susan Embert was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole. That was having been found guilty of an additional charge, which was the poisoning. So that was a life with the possibility of parole in 2019. Here, she is being sentenced with that charge dropped, and the defense can find no conduct since 2019 that would prompt the court to sentence her more harshly than the Honorable Judge Lockett did in 2019. If the court decides that it must identify, or it's encouraged to identify those reasons so that those reasons can be apparent and reviewed by an appellate court. I mean, that is the level of review for this, because we do not want to have a situation where a defendant is punished simply for exercising their right to a new trial. A defendant receives a new trial, goes to trial, and then because they've done nothing except have a new trial, they are punished more harshly for the crime. So that is what Chambers v. State seeks to protect against. Your Honor, A life sentence with parole is a life sentence. It serves all of the purposes of life without parole and has none of the drawbacks. We're asking the court to sentence Mrs. Embert to life with parole today. Thank you, Your Honor.
After having listened to the evidence, certainly the finder of fact is the jury. And the jury in this case determined that Miss Susan Embert was guilty of the 4 counts that she was charged with. I listened intently to the evidence and to the testimony of the witnesses as well as the family members from both sides. This sentence is based only on what the totality of the circumstances in this case was. This is in no way based upon any prior proceedings that took place. I invite attorneys from both sides to do what's necessary within the bounds of the law to advocate for their side. So I don't take offense ever to any requests for appeals or anything of that nature. This decision is based only on the impact that this death has had on the family, on the fact that this jury that was here determined her to be guilty on the charges, the heinous nature of the offense, the timing of this incident, as that the son, Mr. Embert's son, would come back to the home to this. There was a heart-wrenching scene from when he turned back from just a run to go pick up a girlfriend to the father being brutally murdered in his home under the conditions of him being ill. In other words, he was not taking into consideration anything about any poisoning, but he was in a delicate health situation, and for this crime to take place upon him while he was in a delicate medical situation, I think brings more harm or makes the crime more heinous. And based upon just the observation of all of the case from start to finish, count 1, malice murder, I sentenced Ms. Embert to life without the possibility of parole. Count 2, I sentenced her to life without the possibility of parole. Of course, those 2 charges wound into each other, so it's just one. The aggravated assault charge will merge. That will be the maximum of 20 years. And the gun charge, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, 5 years to serve consecutive to life without the possibility of parole. That sentence is not based on anything that happened in 2019 when I was in a completely different court. I didn't follow the case. I had no knowledge of the case at all. I had no communication with the prior judge about the case. This is a fresh look at the case, and I'm ruling in that fashion. There's no vindictiveness